Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and it's Mushin-Makedonskiy and Business Storytelling, and today we've got a special guest. I welcome Lyn Graft, founder of Storytelling for Entrepreneurs and author of one of best-selling and best-selling books. So we'll start with story. Lyn, welcome and thank you for being here today with me.
Appreciate you having me. Glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We are working on establishing the storytelling in business in Russia, and I hope we can get some insights of this for entrepreneurs that are watching us. So, Lyn, could you start a bit with sharing your story? Like, how did you come to be doing storytelling? How did you start and end up here?
You bet. So I originally went and got my graduate degree in business in a city by the name of Austin, Texas. And the school is the University of Texas MBA program. They had a really strong entrepreneurship track within the school. And they also had a really blossoming community in Austin for a lot of high-tech startups. I had an electrical engineering undergrad. I had worked for a computer company now called HP before that. And I wanted to work for a startup out of grad school. So I was fortunate enough to work for I was a seventh person at this startup here in Austin, Texas. It was the first time I ever had a key to the door to a business. So it was really, I felt a lot of ownership getting to work at this company where I had a key to get in every morning. And we did really well. We went from $100,000 in revenue to $2 million over the course of 2 years. And I got an opportunity through my best friend to do another startup. And that was a high-tech startup selling analytics to e-commerce companies. And this is in the late 1990s, around 2000. And it was a rocket ship. We had a great ride of 5 years. And I went through all of the roller coaster experiences that you read about, from super highs to incredibly bad lows, raising capital, not raising capital. We raised, but we made it to a certain point, raised about $7 million. And we had 7 high-profile customers. We were generating revenue, had about 32 people. And then the dot-com crash happened. So this rocket ship that we had that was exploding, we'd have been on the cover of New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today. That rocket ship exploded because the dot-com crash, a lot of our customers were dot-coms. So they disappeared within a matter of months. We went from 7 customers down to 1. We weren't able to go out and raise our third round of funding. And I was sitting there in this 10,000 square foot office trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I decided I just wanted to find something I love, find something I'm really good at, and find something hopefully I can make a lot of money. So I went through this journey of trying out different things. I wrote business plans. I did a nonprofit. I did a startup that did okay. And then I did another one that sold and did pretty good. And then I was on my 4th or 5th one, and this was it was a water sports online e-commerce company, and I thought it was going to be a lot of fun, but it really wasn't. I just didn't like it very much. And my best friend, the same one I'd done the previous company with, she came to me. She goes, I want to do this television show about women CEOs raising capital in the high-tech space in Texas. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. I don't know anything about video or TV or film or anything, but I decided to help her. And I really enjoyed the process of figuring out how to tell a story on camera. And we're just kind of working out, trying to figure out how do you do a TV show. And we got our first paid project, and it was to film a short video, 4 or 5 minutes, featuring this super high profile Texas billionaire. Was named Dr. George Kosmetsky, one of the first billionaires in Texas. So we were filming him for this project. So he's the subject. My best friend, she's the on-camera talent, asking him questions, and I'm the producer. And this is my first paid gig ever. And while we're interviewing him, he says to Ingrid, who happens to also be his mentee, he was her mentor. And he says, Ingrid, to get a perspective of my legacy, what this video was about, you should interview 2 of my other mentees. And she's all excited. She goes, yeah, who are they? Who should it be? And he goes, well, Michael Dell, the founder of Dell Computers, and then Red McCombs, the founder of Clear Channel, and he was the owner of the Minnesota Vikings and San Antonio Spurs.
Oh
So
my God.
my first paid video project ever, I got to film 3 billionaire entrepreneurs. And I was like, wow, like this kid in the candy store. I was so excited. These were very diverse individuals that came from different backgrounds, had incredibly different stories, but yet had all made it to the mountaintop, so to speak, creating billion-dollar companies that were literally changing the landscape of the United States at the time, and in fact, the world since. And I just kind of caught the bug. I was like, wow, this small little video with these huge, massive stories of these inspiring entrepreneurs, I was like, I love this. Let's do more of it. And that was 15 years ago. I've been doing it ever since. I've filmed about 500 entrepreneurs in the last 15 years. And most of them have been really high profile folks. I'm doing content for television shows or publications, the corporations. Sometimes the founders themselves need a video for their company, for their website. So it's just been something that I have just, not only it discovered me, and then I just kind of went down that path and kept looking for opportunities to capture the stories of inspiring entrepreneurs that were literally changing the world as we see it.
Wow, that's really a story of an entrepreneur. I see this like this combination of real trying and trial and failure and trial and trial and trial, and this serendipity that you show about how you've come across with those people. That's just great. I mean, I hear pure luck, but and I don't feel any pressure from this story, and I feel like you're the one who is trying but still remaining humble about this process. And it's great. It's a great example of a storytelling. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I think one of the things you'll find, Artem, is that when you're around some of these incredibly successful entrepreneurs, the majority of them have had massive failures. They really have seen the troughs, the valleys, in addition to successes, because it's enabled them to develop experience, knowledge, wisdom, figure out how to kind of carve their path. And when you're around people at that success level, and so many of them are humble themselves, and it just teaches you can always learn something new. You're always around people that are doing something incredibly different, and you can just absorb, and curiosity is what drives me a lot, and I enjoy being around these folks. Oh, I lost your audio real quick.
Oh, that's just a mistake. I mean, I said that it really sounds powerful in here, and yeah, thank you so much. You know, about this whole process, I mean, in 15 years, you've gathered more than 500 stories of those folks, and I have really two-tailed question here. First, I guess you have a tip for finding and digging out those stories that would really be valuable to the audience, first one. And the secondly, is there a story you would like to share, like one of the most amazing ones or like the most influencing ones you'd like to share right now?
Yeah, I'll kind of combine the answers to those questions by sharing the story of one of my favorite entrepreneurs, because he has not only an incredible story, and he's built one of the most well-known brands in the world. I learned from what happened to him how to build the framework that I now teach for entrepreneurial storytelling. And this was a guy by the name of Howard Schultz. He was living in New York City, working for an appliance company at the time. And he sold basically espresso machines, kitchen appliances, things like that. And he had this company, one of his customers was buying a bunch of espresso machines, and they happened to be in Seattle. So he wanted to go visit this customer, understand why they were buying so many machines. And he went up there and he got to visit him. And this was a coffee bean company. They sold coffee beans. But they also would put espresso machines in their store so that they could make coffee fresh when the customers come in and they wanted to try the different brands and flavors from around the world. And he became so enamored by this company, what they were doing. He started to fall in love with coffee. So he quit his high-profile job in New York City, moved his family out to Seattle so that he could join this company, and just started helping them build their coffee bean company. And on a trip that he made to Italy, he went to Milan for one of those manufacturing industry type coffee conferences, if you will. And at the time, remember, they were making coffee beans, but when he was going from his hotel room to the conference, he decided to take the back alleys. Now, he's in Milan, Italy, so that back alleys in Milan are a lot different than back alleys other places, I'm sure. But he happened to come across the coffee bar. It's something that we had never seen in the United States before, you know, these espresso bars. And it's where he coined it, called it the third place. So the first place is your home, the second place being your place of work, and the third place was this coffee espresso bar type place where the entire neighborhood and community would come together, and they'd read a book, or they'd talk, they'd go on dates, they'd sit there and read the newspaper, drinking espressos, and they had all the sounds of the big espresso machine going off and on, and they had those Italian names being thrown around, beautiful things, and you could just feel the vibe that he created. And he goes, when he got back to the United States and he told his coffee bean company he was working for, he goes, we have to create the same coffee bars and espresso bars that I saw in Italy here in the United States. And it was a long story, but basically he ended up convincing them to open up a little coffee restaurant bar type place, and it was called Il Giornato. And the coffee bean company, they didn't want to go that route. So he ended up quitting, and he took that concept with him. And eventually he ended up buying the name back from the coffee bean company for his coffee bar, and it was called Starbucks. So he ended up creating this Starbucks coffee bar, and it was all centered on the experience they had in Milan. So a lot of times when I'm teaching people about storytelling, people tend to get caught up in the hero's journey, or maybe they're trying to go through a very complex structure that's got 7 or 8 different acts into it, or they're using names and terms that aren't necessarily familiar to how you and I would talk on a regular basis, and it just gets really confusing. And I always go back to what Howard Schultz did when he shares the story of Starbucks, which is now one of the top 10 brands in the world. They generate $63 billion in revenue over the year, over 10,000 locations across the world. It all centered on that experience that he had when he went to Milan and he walked from his hotel room to the conference, and he came across that espresso bar, and it changed everything for him. So when he was raising money for the idea, when he was pitching the idea to people to come work for him, when he was trying to get the press to write about what this vision for what Starbucks could be, it all goes back to that experience that he had in Milan. And he builds a story around that experience that makes you want to go out and have a cup of coffee. So at the core of what I teach and what I recommend for entrepreneurs to focus on when they're working on crafting a story from scratch is just think of an experience that triggered an idea in your head, or maybe it was an aha moment that you had that led to the company that you're now creating. Center the story around that unique experience that either was the idea for the company or put you down that path that led you to the company that you're creating now. Keep it as simple as that, and you'll be well on your way to creating a successful company, and hopefully something as successful as Starbucks has been.
You know, wow, that's the first time I really hear that story from someone in such a way, because I really heard the Howard Schultz story and I really appreciate his deeds. But you know, that's just a really powerful way to tell it. I really appreciate how you hit at a part where you like the whole Starbucks name until the end where it really happened, and there was no clue that he is the guy. So that's really an origin story. Thank you so much. And you know, that's a great example. Is it correct that, well, I mean, have you talked to him personally, or is it just a story from your experience? I mean, that this?
No, so the way that happened is that when I was producing that television show I told you about earlier that led to me creating the production company, we ended up pitching a show idea called American Made to CNBC. And this was a primetime television series that they agreed to do, and we did an entire season.
Wow.
And Howard Schultz was the first entrepreneur that we filmed in the series. So it was an hour-long episode on the story of Starbucks and how he built the company into the brand he did. So we had an opportunity to film him 3 different times as we're creating the television show. And then this year, he happened to be in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. And I was able to give him a copy of my book that he's in the first chapter. So when you read the book, you'll be able to see that story in more detail. I'll send you a picture so you can post that in the interview of when I gave my book to him. I was like, one of my best moments ever was to give, he was such an integral part of what I teach. And the opportunity to gift him that book was just one of the highlights of my entire professional career from a producer standpoint.
Wow. Lyn, that's just amazing. I mean, it's already an amazing fact that you've been doing this and you've gifted the book to Howard. But what more amazes me is that I often hear a lot of stories of the founders, and it's the first time I found the person who is really responsible for the story coming to life. So, well, just thank you so much for this. This is really an impact on the entrepreneur world. Great. You said about the book. I would like to pose a question there, and you said that this origin story is one of the types of the story you should tell. So my question is also 2 ways. So what is it in the book? Like what's so special about this book? Because there are lots on the storytelling market. And are there any types of stories you offer entrepreneurs to tell to achieve success? And are there in the book?
You bet. So when I wanted to create this book, I wanted to do something that was just for business owners. It was for founders, for entrepreneurs, because when I was trying to learn to be a video producer or start my company, a lot of the books I read or the resources and videos I watched, they weren't really specifically designed for a business owner. A lot of times they were for people that were in film or that wanted to write a book. They needed to have a manuscript, or they wanted to have some type of narrative arc, such as in The Hero's Journey, which I love. The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell is an amazing book, but it's very complicated. And Robert McKee, one of the most famous story writers in all of Hollywood, has a great book on story, but it's super thick. It's very complicated. And there's all kinds of terms I didn't understand. And the other part about that is when you're a founder of a company, when you're first starting out, you don't have a team. You don't have a bunch of resources. You awfully don't have very much money. Sometimes all you have is your idea. So the one thing you do have or have the ability to create is a story. So the book is designed specifically for first-time founders that know a story is important, but they don't quite know how to create their story from scratch or which story they should use, or just kind of the mechanics of how you evolve a story and make it better, more compelling and memorable and stand out from everybody else. So the book is designed to teach you about the power of story, why it's pervasive in every culture on the planet, how it impacts your brain and your heart, which are critical when you're trying to create a company. You need resources. So a story helps you get those resources. So I help you understand the art and science behind it. And then I walk you through a framework that is a step-by-step process to help you take that experience I referenced earlier and turn that into a compelling story. And then once you have that story, how to evolve it, improve upon it, practice it, test it. And then once you have a solid story, the most important thing you want to do when you go out and share that with the world is kind of own it. So I just kind of walk you through all the steps to get you the foundation for the importance of a story as a founder, as an entrepreneur, not as a marketing executive or not as somebody in film or someone trying to write a book. This is a person who's looking to start a company, launch a product or service, walk you through the foundation of why story is important, then the step-by-step process of how to create it, how to improve upon it, how to test it in different situations and practice it, and finally, when you get out there and share it with the world, the things you need to do to be successful when you share it.
That's a strong focus. I mean, Lynn, is there anything you could share about the types of stories, or is it like, I don't want to put the cards out of your hands and of your sleeves, so but maybe just a hint on what else should an entrepreneur should tell?
Yeah, you asked that question earlier. I forgot to answer that. So basically, I think I've studied hundreds of entrepreneurs, and I actually made this spreadsheet because I was trying to track the different types of stories. So I probably had 300 or 400. I wrote them down on one sheet, and I put all this criteria on the columns and rows. And then there was one category I really wanted to identify was the types of stories. And it came down to 6 different types of stories that were the most common above everything else. And it represented 90 to 95% of all the stories fell into these particular categories. And the one that I almost always gravitate towards when working with someone for the first time or teaching in an online course or coaching is I want you to focus on what was that origin story? What was that initial kernel that triggered you to launch the company? Something happened in your life that has a meaningful relationship to the business that caused you to launch this company. I mean, starting a business is hard. You wouldn't do this if it was easy, and it's just a very challenging thing. So to pursue the entrepreneurial path requires some high level of motivation, and something happened in your life to trigger you down that path to start a company. So it's usually centering on that experience, that trigger point that caused you to go down this path and launch the company. So that's what I just call that origin story, the founding story, something that caused you to go down this path. And the other story I'd recommend, the second most common one, because if you're not quite sure, maybe you don't remember, or it was this iterative process, you can't quite nail it down, I always recommend to lean on Old Faithful, which is a problem solution story. So you had a problem and you came up with a solution to address that problem, and here's the results you got out of it. Or maybe you know someone in your life or your target audience, this is the problem they have. Here's the solution that you created with your offering, and this is how this solution is going to help them solve that problem and do whatever it is they want to do from that. So those are the 2 types that I recommend: the origin story and then a problem solution story, of kind of the backdrop if you don't have a really good starting point.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for those insights. I'm not going to ask any further. I'm getting this book already, and you know it.
All right. I like buyers.
Okay, so Lynn, in one of the interviews, you are calling the story the Swiss Army knife for an entrepreneur. Could you cover on this metaphor and tell me why do you think that the story is itself a valuable tool? And why a knife?
Yeah, I call it the Swiss Army knife of entrepreneurship. It's because when I was starting my own company and starting the second and third and fourth, fifth companies, I've done 8 so far, I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but I was using the story for each company for every facet of the business. It didn't matter whether I was fundraising, whether I was trying to close sales, recruit people to come work with me, convince my family members to give me money so I could launch the company, trying to get the press to write about me. When I was trying to recruit my advisory board and then my board of directors, I was constantly using my own story to accomplish those objectives. And then as I started studying all these other entrepreneurs that were incredibly successful, I asked them questions. So what did you use a story for? And it was the same thing. Every facet of the business, I found that they were using a story to move the ball forward, to launch and grow the company. So it's one of those things that you can use your story, a compelling founding story, for every discipline within the business. In addition, you're going to be using that story, that founding story, for the entire life of the company, through every stage, from the idea stage to the launch stage, to the get out of the gates, to the growth stage, to the scale stage. You're constantly going to be asked, how did you start your company? Tell me the story about your company. So you're going to use it at every single stage and even beyond. I mean, the companies that I've sold or went out of business, I still tell those stories today. So it's one of those things that you can use it for every aspect of the business for as long as you own the business and at every different point along the business. So that's why I call it the Swiss Army knife, because it's so ambidextrous and a great utility for you as a business owner.
Great. That's really a great piece of information. I mean, there is a special treatment for storytelling, I would say, in Russia, because some people regard it like only for brand or only for sales or only for training. But what I'm hearing right now is like it's a universal tool without any fix on how you can use it. And or am I hearing you right? Like you say that you used your origin story, or did you use different types of stories, or was it like general storytelling? How do you feel about it?
So in the early stages of the company, you're typically going to be using the origin story, that founding story, because that's a lot of times that's all you have. But as the company grows and you acquire customers, then you can start developing a customer story. As the company gets its feet underneath it and you start developing that brand and what you stand for and kind of all the messaging, then you can start to evolve a brand story. Now that can all be the same thing, but you're going to find as the company evolves, as it grows, as you bring on more people, you're going to need different types of stories for different applications or different customer audiences or audiences that you're going to be wanting to talk with to optimize it. So it's good to have a toolbox of multiple stories depending on the audience that you have, depending on the medium you're going to be communicating, and then the amount of time that you're going to have. So all those are going to dictate which story you use, how you communicate it, and how long you tell it. So it's good to have a nice plethora of solid stories. First and foremost, get a really good founding story because you're going to use that forever. And then look at getting customer stories because customers ultimately are going to drive sales. So the more you can communicate to someone the problem you solve for them through another customer's story, the better. And investors love customer stories. Really important to them as well. The press, they love stories. Brand stories are important, but they're not. Typically, the company, you got to have your feet underneath you, and the company needs to have a brand per se before you have a brand story. So your founding story is a great temporary one until you have a really good brand story. So those are different types I'd recommend.
Great, thank you. That's a good recommendation. Great. You said, I heard that there was something about the story, like you can use it anywhere, and like it's a universal tool. But here's a trick question: have you ever faced a situation in your career that when you said like, well, here's not a time for a story, you should use like a different technique, maybe in communication? And I don't mean Excel or like working with numbers. I mean, in the same situation, have you ever encountered such tasks?
Yeah, definitely. Fundraising is a perfect example where it's not always a great idea to share your story because investors are some of the pickiest audiences you're ever going to face. And investors differ so much, from angel investors to family and friends to venture capitalists to private equity to people that loan you money. Everybody has a different set of parameters that they're looking for to understand why they're going to give you money or lend you money. Friends and your family, they just want to be paid back. Investors are looking for massive returns. Bank loans want to know you're low risk and that you're going to pay this over time so they get their money back. So everybody's got a different career. And sometimes they don't want to know about the story. Sometimes they just want to know who are your competitors. They want to know why you. Why should I back you? I'm going to give you $1 million or $100,000 or $10 million. I'm picking you as the jockey and the horse. Why should I give you money? So they don't necessarily always want to hear that founding story in situations like that. They're looking sometimes on very specific numbers. They want to know what type of competitive analysis you've done on the industry, or they want to know what is your profit margin, what's your gross margin, what do you see your ROI being on different elements. And I have made that mistake more than a few times by trying to share an inspirational story and share my why, when at the end of the day, some of these people don't even care. And let me give a qualifier for that. Remember this, everyone is human, right? So we all have things that drive us emotionally, and we all make decisions based on emotions, even though we live in this analytical world when you're an investor. So it's not that they don't value your story, it's just there's certain times where they don't care. They just want to know, tell me the numbers, tell me about the market, tell me about you, or tell me about the operational aspects of the company, and it's not a good situation to use a story. So you just got to read your audience, be cognizant what's going to resonate with them, and then understand when not to and when to deliver a story.
I mean, great, thank you. I hear something similar to what Sean Callahan puts in his book, Putting Stories to Work. He has some objectives, or some situations where you shouldn't use a story, and that's a great addition to this list. I mean, some people really don't care, and you don't have to make them care, and that's just not the time for stories. Great. But still, story is really a valuable tool for entrepreneurs. And one question I would like you to give me an answer for is, could you give me a case where you work with a client, or I don't know, some company, and you've used the storytelling in a way to enhance their business, like just a business case from your career?
Oh, okay, got it. So, yeah, so I do this a lot with customers, or clients, I should say, whether I'm making a video for them, or in the last few years, I started coaching and working in groups with entrepreneurs through incubators and accelerators. So most of the time, it centers on how do we drive sales. I think almost always, people fall in the folks that I'm typically working with fall into three categories. It's either raising capital, they're trying to drive sales, or they're trying to get press. So I'm going to use the customers as the first. So there's a company I was working with. This is a CPG, means consumer packaged goods company, and they were looking for a way to resonate with customers. They wanted to understand how could they communicate their product and why it's important and why it's unique and different from everybody else out there, so that people would buy from them. Now, they knew they had a good quality product, and they knew that they were unique and different from everybody else out there, but they weren't able to articulate it in a short format way. They just kept going down all the features and the benefits. And what we worked on is crafting a story about how this particular product had helped someone lose weight specifically. And it not only did it help them lose weight, it helped them reduce the number of drugs that they were taking. It helped them become healthier. They were able to start working out more. They started to sleep better through the night. They were sleeping 4 or 5 hours. Now they're sleeping 7 or 8 hours. So we crafted this story about a customer they had helped from their supplement that enabled them to sleep better, lose weight, take less medicines, pharmaceutical products on a daily basis, and overall feel better. So it became less about the specific features of the product, and it more about the story of this person that they had a tremendous impact on their life. And that's where you're going to remember that kind of story, because it resonates more. I mean, who doesn't want to sleep better? Who doesn't want to lose weight and feel healthier and just be an all-around healthier person? So that really resonates with you or me, anyone when you're listening to, as opposed to trying to listen on the back of the supplements about why you've got this much of a particular ingredient versus another ingredient when people can't even pronounce those ingredients. People don't care. They just want to lose weight, get better sleep, feel healthier. So that's an example of using a story specifically for a consumer packaged goods company that had a supplement product.
Wow, that's really a strong case. I mean, you have the client name, and it goes like a story itself. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's really persuading. And I mean, the client story is really something to get onto when you work with stories. Okay, good. So
okay.
I have two questions that I usually pose in the end of the interview for all the storytellers, and I really have different answers. there wasn't one single like similar yet. So let me pose them to you. First one goes like this. What would be your advice to someone who is in the beginning of developing his storytelling skills? Maybe like let's narrow it down to an entrepreneur who is starting to develop his storytelling skills. What would you advise him to do?
So first and foremost, what you want to do, you want to think about that experience that led you to create your company. Think about that founding story, that origin moment, that it was an aha moment or the problem you solved. Kind of start there so that you at least got something you can write it down. Now, and then just kind of write it down to kind of figure out where you start. The second thing I would do is, this is one of the most helpful things you can do, is find great storytellers. Go to YouTube or whatever the equivalent is in Russia and get examples of stories that really speak to you, that you're like, oh man, that's such a great story. And just keep watching and learning as much as you can from great storytellers so that you can mimic some of the things that they're doing. So what is the kind of the setup they give before they got to that moment? And then what do they tell you about afterwards? Why does it work with you? Why is it so memorable? Why is it you want to go out there and share it with other people? Just use that as kind of a starting point. Learn from the best, so to speak. And that's going to help you with your own story from that standpoint. The third thing I would do is, one of the things we tend to often not give ourselves credit for is that we've all done amazing things in our life. And if you've started a company, you are doing something unique and special. So what I recommend to folks is do a personal inventory. Because ultimately, when you're going to be sharing your story to an investor, to a customer, to the media, to a board member, whoever that audience may be, they're always going to be asking themselves, either subconsciously or directly to you, why you? So you want to have this inventory of assets about everything you've done in your life, your accolades, your accomplishments, everything that got you to this moment right here, right now. Because the one thing I always tell every founder is there's not one person on the entire planet that has the experience you have, the knowledge you've gained, and the set of connections that you have. So what you want to do is you want to leverage all those unique things that make you special in the world. Build that resume of everything that makes you the only person that can do this. Figure that out. Write it down so that when people start asking you about your idea, you can tell them why you're the best person to accomplish this particular idea. Those two starting points, taking an inventory of your assets, your credentials, the experience that led you to start this company, the why, if you will. What is your why? We talked about before the camera started rolling. Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. That's always something you can think about. Why am I doing this company? The problem that you're trying to solve, the audience that you're going after, and the solution you provide them. And then while you're doing that, just every night, just watch an inspiring story or read an inspiring book. That's one of the things I've done on my blog. I try to get really inspiring stories. I read Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, Fortune, Forbes. I'm constantly consuming stories. Even I've been doing this for 15 years. I love consuming inspiring stories because they get me motivated and pumped up, and you can learn from them. So every time you watch a story, you read an article, or you're talking with a friend that's like making you laugh, or they're making you excited about what they're doing, learn from them, borrow from them, and then weave that into your own starting process. And that'll give you a really good starting point for creating a story from scratch.
So building your story, starting from your origin story, finding it, and learning from the best, continuing. And I love how you talk about the continuous learning, because 15 years is some time that you could just sit back and relax and say, like, I'm an expert. But you keep learning, and that's really refreshing. And it's empowering. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Lyn's second question is, I came up with the phrase. First, we've talked about the entrepreneur and his storytelling skills, and now let's dive into the story. So, I want you to finish the phrase. It takes one thing to get from good story to a great story, and that one thing is
that you need to get the attention of your audience by focusing on something that's going to make a powerful emotional connection with them. And the reason I share that with you is that if you don't make a connection with your audience, you're never going to be able to get them to do what you want them to do. Having something that connects with someone on an emotional level is going to give them, it's going to cause them to not only pay attention to what you have to share, it's hopefully going to get them to listen to you and take action on what you want to do. So if you go back to the earlier recommendation I was talking about of thinking back to what that experience that triggered your founding story and doing that personal inventory of your credentials and your accolades and everything else like that, what you're looking for is something that inspires you internally, that you share in your story, that creates that emotional connection, that bridge, if you will. You want a bridge to your audience. So if there's one thing that's going to take a good story to great, is finding something very deep and powerfully from an emotional standpoint that can be inspiring, it could be sad, it could be motivating, it could be enjoyable, just something that really triggers the emotions into your audience, and that's going to help you take your story from just even okay to good or good to great.
Okay, so using a strong emotional point and using this connection with the audience. That's a great advice for making great stories. And I haven't heard it yet because 15 interviews into it, and that's the first time someone poses it in this way. So thank you. That's one more unique answer to those questions.
All right, I'm glad to give you something different, unique.
Thank you, Lyn. Thank you so much for being with me today and sharing your insights. I really appreciate your time for being here. And could you give some context where folks around here can find you and your books so that they can find you?
Yep, you bet. So I have a website you can go to called Storytelling for Entrepreneurs, and that's storytellingentrepreneurs.com. That's probably the best place to find information on. I've got a blog series there. On YouTube, I've got a video series of the same name called Storytelling for Entrepreneurs. I just launched that this year, sharing tips like we're doing today about storytelling. So every week, every Wednesday, I post a new video for that. And then my book, let me show you this. Here's my book, Start with Story. This is an oversized book cover poster of it, but you can go to Amazon and get this book, Start with Story. I use that all the time. I walk around like a sandwich board so I can promote my book. You gotta use self-promote, as you know, Artem. So you gotta get out there. So
yeah, story and self-promotion. That's
yep, you gotta do it. So go to storytellingforentrepreneurs.com, YouTube to watch the Storytelling for Entrepreneurs video series, or go to Amazon and get the Start with Story book.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lyn. That's been an amazing talk today, and I really wish you all the great stories to come. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. Thanks for the audience, and I look forward to hearing from all you guys. All right.
Thank you.